Hi, everybody, and welcome to September's version of the Solution Building Couples Therapy Seminar hosted by the Connie Institute and myself, Elliott Connie, the founder and executive director of the Connie Institute. And I'm happy to be recording this webinar and actually making it available for people to see what we have in store. But first of all, I just want to say that this is actually a recording, not the actual webinar. The webinar was actually hosted on Monday of this week, but there were two problems that caused me to decide to re-record it so we could put it on our YouTube channel and on our website. The first one was I wasn't feeling terribly well the day I did it. My allergies were absolutely horrible. As the seasons are changing here in Texas, it really took its toll on me and uh, caused me to have some serious respiratory problems. And then the second thing was I'm going to show a video clip of myself working with a couple during this webinar. And when I did it live, the um, the sound didn't work, and I was so devastated. Oh my gosh, I didn't like that at all. So we're going to do that same presentation, and I'm going to go through that same video clip or video clips plural. Um, And this time I'm going to ensure that the sound works because I think I know why the sound did not work. Man, I was so embarrassed and frustrated. I don't like technical problems, and somehow when I'm around, so are technical problems. So we're going to make this recording today and make it available for people so they can see the webinar that we offer through our institute on a monthly basis and get the content because we're so passionate about helping people do solution building work with couples. So I'm Elliott Connie, and as you can see on the screen, those are my websites where you can find information about my work. ElliottConnie.com is my practice website. ElliottSpeaks.com is where I really do most of my work, like my blogging and videos, and you can opt into my mailing list. You can buy my products, including books and videotapes and audio tapes and things like that. We're really excited also on that site. I have recorded two uh, sessions of me doing therapy for production, and those are available on that site. And it's kind of similar to, I guess, like a YouTube or a Netflix or something, like Hulu, something like that. You get a screen name and you log in and you can watch the tapes that are right there on the site. So I'm a big believer in learning how to do solution focused therapy or maybe even any psychotherapy at all. You have to be able to see it in action to truly understand how to build a conversation in real time. So I made those tapes available to the public. The next website is ElliottWrites.com, and on that website, all my writing materials are there. My 3 books, a couple of articles I've written for magazines. Soon to be published, there will be some research that I'm working on and journal articles and I'm writing and things like that. So I use that website just to put all my writing stuff. And then, of course, www.theconnieinstitute.com, which is the training institute and where you can find this material. So, um, first, a few announcements. Um, For more information on trainings that we do on solution building couples therapy and using the solution focused approach with couples, visit theconnieinstitute.com. Our next training is coming up on October 18th in our office in Keller, Texas. It's a full day training from 9 to 4. And the topic of that training will be solution focused therapy beyond the miracle, which really focusing on what to do in sessions 2, 3, 4, 5, all the subsequent kind of follow-up sessions instead of just the first session. A lot of solution-focused trainings and materials, understandably so, are about the first session and how to build a solution-focused conversation in session number 1. But this training is how to do follow-up sessions and how to conduct solution-focused therapy in trainings other than the first one. And I'm really excited because I had a couple of weeks ago that agreed to let me videotape a second session, and it was a remarkable change that occurred between sessions 1 and 2. I tell my trainees and new learners of the approach that the most remarkable things happen in the psychotherapy world between sessions 1 and 2. And very recently, I got a great piece of tape of myself working with a couple, and we recorded session number 2. And I can't show it here on this venue because I don't have permission to make it public, but I do have permission to use it in training. So the first time I train with it, it's probably going to be at this workshop. I'm going to be going to Denmark and Switzerland in the next coming week, so I might show it there. But for sure, I'm going to show it at the October 18th training. So if anybody would be interested in learning to use the solution-focused approach with couples through the method that we call solution building couples therapy, please come on board. We keep our trainings in our office really small. I happen to think that that's a better learning experience, much more interactive. Most of our trainings are between 6 and 10 people. So to be quite honest, we expect them all to sell out for that reason, and usually do. So since it's only coming up in a couple weeks, we've already had several people sign up. So I think we have a few spots. Actually, I know we have a few spots left. I just can't really say right now how many we have left. But if you're interested in coming to that training, go to www.theconnieinstitute.com and register and sign up, because I think it's going to be great. Next is, if you'd like a copy of these slides, they are available. I believe they're even already available at www.elliottSpeaks.com/thanks-for-attending/. And that way, if you're the type that is taking notes, you don't have to write down everything verbatim. You can have these particular slides from that website. And then also, I want to let people know that my new book is available, The Solution Focused Marriage, 5 Simple Habits That Will Bring Out the Best in Your Relationship. I'm so excited about this book. It has been on the Kindle's top seller list in the category of marriage and family and counseling in the United States, the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany, and Canada, and France, actually. So in those 6 countries, it's really been performing well. This is it's my third book, but it's my first for the general public and actually couples. It's my first non-professional book, and I just can't believe how well it's been received thus far. And I hope that everybody would go out and get it. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about, and so pleased to offer this information to people. It's based on just 5 habits that I've noticed in my clinical work with couples over these years, that when people do these things, the impact is immediate, long-lasting, and positive on their relationships. And I eventually became compelled to write it in a book. So there's the link. You can buy it on the Amazon. The link is right there on the website. It's also available for the Nook, so you can get it at Amazon on the Kindle, Barnes & Noble on the Nook. And eventually, by eventually I mean any day now, really, but next couple days, next couple of weeks, you'll be able to get the paperback version also through Amazon and also through Barnes & Noble, and all the other major booksellers, really. Right now, if you'd like to get a paperback version, you can order it from me directly at ElliottSpeaks.com, and I think the paperback price is $14.99, and the e-reader price is $7.99, I think. So that's how you can pick up that book, and I hope you guys would, because I'm really pleased and excited about it. And then this is a huge announcement that I wanted to share with people. My close friend and mentor, Dr. Linda Metcalf, and I are hosting a solution-focused expo during the 3-day weekend there in February. I can't remember which holiday it is, actually. One of the President's Days, I think, maybe even President's Day, but February 14th and 15th, we're going to have just a great lineup of solution-focused trainers and thinkers that will be offering training and doing workshops. I'm going to be doing the opening plenary. Dr. Metcalf will be doing the closing plenary. Registration is now open at www.thesolutionfocusedexpo.com, and we're also accepting abstracts for anybody that wants to do a workshop as part of this event. Now, we've already been contacted by some of the really well-known big names in the solution-focused community, and I'm quite positive we're going to have one heck of a lineup of really wonderful information available at this event. Now, I'm not at liberty quite yet to say who we're going to have. We're going to make that announcement later on in September, first week in October timeframe. But if you are interested in solution focused therapy and Disney, of course, this is going to be an event you do not want to miss. So go to the website, check out what we have to offer there, and by all means, please register. And in sticking with my idea that smaller events tend to be better learning opportunities because they're more interactive, more kind of face to face, more conversation, I guess, can be had. This event also, it's going to be kind of a small conference, so you might want to register as soon as possible because we've already had several inquiries, and we don't expect this to be open very long. We expect this to sell out as well. So, okay, so enough of the announcements. So let's get to talking about solution-focused therapy and using solution-building couples therapy in your work. So the first thing that I always like to tell people is this approach is simple. It's just a simple approach. Now, simple does not mean easy, and as I frequently say, because of its simplicity, it's probably one of the hardest things to do because it requires so much discipline and so much thoughtfulness on the behalf of the psychotherapist. But it is simply about asking the next question and nothing more. It's simply about keeping the conversation going by building another question, and it's based upon curiosity and not nosy. And by curiosity, what I mean is when we do solution building work with couples, the first thing we're going to do is establish a destination through the relationship by using a question that was developed by Chris Iveson, Harvey Ratner, and Evan George. When you initially start off a session, you start off by saying, what are your best hopes? And once we get a good, concrete best hopes answer, then my questions and my work has to be related to the client's best hopes. That keeps me being curious and respectfully so, and not nosy and accidentally delving into topics and content that the client would rather I not do. And the number one rule in doing this work is the therapist is responsible 100% for asking questions that produce useful answers. That's my job. That is my role. That is the job and role I accept as their clinician, that I'm going to ask them questions that produce useful answers. And if useful answers are not produced, it's because I didn't ask them useful questions. And the couple takes all of the credit for each and every useful answer. Now, for me, this is such an important idea, as I can remember very clearly when I first started working in this field. I had a job where I was doing very cognitive behavioral work, and I was working in a kind of a team environment with a bunch of other psychotherapists on the team with me. And I can remember very clearly that when somebody would have a client that would make some sort of profound progress, the team would really shower the therapist with accolades and praise for being, for being a wonderful therapist and developing a great intervention and all of that. And I just never really understood that. Like, that never really sat well with me. Because I would always think, like, why am I getting the praise? I'm not the one that began to say no to drugs or treat my parents differently or treat my kids differently or whatever progress this family or client made. And in this approach, we're going to make sure that the client gets all of the credit for the answers they give in session and the changes they make between sessions. So I think when you're learning about the solution-focused approach, it starts with these 5 basic tenets of solution-focused therapy and solution-focused work. The first idea is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And you can find this list in one of my favorite solution-focused texts, which is More Than Miracles. But if it is not broken, don't fix it. If something is found to be working, do more of it. The language of solution development is different than that needed to describe a problem. Now, this idea, I think, is so important when we're talking about the solution building process, because we're going to be going and asking questions about a very different thing than just a description of the problem, or in fact a detailed analytical description of the problem. We're going to be asking for and eliciting descriptions of something very different. So we have to understand the difference between solution development and problem description. And no problems happen all of the time. There are always exceptions. So no matter how big the problem or how profound the problem, and in couples therapy, this is super important because couples come to your office with really intense and really high emotion type of problems that are going on in their lives. And sometimes they kind of forget that the problems do not happen all the time. They actually will use uh, um, like all the time type language when they're in my office and describing their relationship or the behaviors of one of their partner. But no problems happen all the time. There are always exceptions. As Steve Jasazzer would say, there must be an exception to prove the problem, right? Just think about it. If you had a headache to the same degree every day from the day you were born until this day, then there would be no way that you would know that you had a headache or that the presence of the headache was unusual, because to you it would just be normal. There must have been a time where the headache either went away completely or the severity of the headache decreased to let you know that the headache's presence is odd. So there must be exceptions, and especially in romantic relationships, because the romantic relationship is one of the only relationships of that level of closeness and intensity that you choose. Like, I didn't choose my brothers, I didn't choose my mother, my father, all those things, but I did choose my spouse. And there must have been a good reason for that choice. And there must have been things she was doing that caused me to make that choice, and at least for some bit of time feel good about that choice. And that is what I mean by the idea of exceptions. And then lastly, the future is creatable. No matter how difficult the past has been or how severe the problems we're currently struggling with are, we can do something to create whatever our idea is for our preferred future. So there are a few principles that I think are important in working with couples. Um, every couple comes from a successful past. Now, this gets back to what I was just saying a second ago, that there must have been something going on in the early stages of the relationship that caused you to choose this person as your partner. And even if it only lasted for a moment, there must have been a reason why you chose that partner, and there must have been some bit of time, whether it lasted minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or years, where you felt good about that choice and the relationship was working much better for both people. So we have to work from the idea that every couple comes from a successful past. Now, our job is to connect with the couple and not just the individuals in the couple. And what I mean by that is I want to kind of connect with the culture of that couple. Now, I don't just mean culture, ethnicity, nationality, religiosity, or anything like that. I mean like the world view that this couple makes up and creates. I want to connect into that world. And I'm going to do that by asking a series of questions, which I'm going to show in a second when we use the video tape example. But I want to connect with the couple in their world, not just, you know, Dave or Celeste. I want to understand the world that Dave and Celeste make up together. And this is going to make me a much more respectful and informed question asker of Dave and Celeste. And it's going to cause us to have a very real connection going through the therapy process. And I'm going to direct each question to both members of the couple. So Dave and Celeste will be able to equally contribute to the way the conversation is being co-constructed. The solution building process is a process based on this idea of co-construction. So when you're working with a couple, that means the co-construction process takes place between three people, each member of the couple as well as the therapist. Now, this is very different than working with individuals, because that would be two people, right? Back and forth, back and forth. But when you're working with a couple, the conversation has to be co-constructed between three people. And that's going to require the therapist to be able to use data associated with each member. And the only way to ensure that is to make sure that each member of the couple gets an opportunity to answer each and every question so they can input their data before I build another question. And this allows for the conversation to never really go in a direction that both members of the couple have not contributed to, and thus they're both okay with the way the conversation is going. And the beauty is in the details. So we do what we always do with things that we see are beautiful, we focus on them. Couples are going to come into your office and they're going to focus on their fighting strategies. I cannot tell you how many times couples have come to my office and they say things to me like, we need to learn how to fight better. Excuse me. That's because we have been focusing so much on the presence of their problem, the fighting, the lack of trust, the lack of intimacy, whatever. But we're going to kind of focus on the beautiful parts of the relationship. What made the relationship wonderful. I remember I was working with, this has been a couple of years now, but I was working with this couple where the the wife had a previous methamphetamine addiction, and when she met her husband, it caused her to get clean. And I remember asking this couple, what was it about your husband that let you know he was worth getting clean for? And she had forgotten that in a previous time in her life, she was so desirous of being with this husband that she gave up one of the most powerful drugs on earth and put in a lot of work to do so, rehab treatment and therapy and all that stuff, and was able to maintain a cleanness over a lifetime from that time until when I got to meet them. She had been clean several years when we met. She had forgotten that he was that guy and had forgotten that she was once so in love with him that she was willing to take such a drastic step because she had spent so much time on his current misgivings. We're going to get back in touch with the beautiful parts of their relationship and the beautiful details that are going to make up their preferred future. And as a therapist, I have to carefully select which part of the couple's answer I'm going to be curious about and thus build into my next question. People don't give answers in a nice, clear, clean cut way, right? Like I don't say, what are your best hopes from this session? And people say, oh, I'd like to be happy. It's typically, it comes in a very long sentence, and I have to be very selectful on which part of that sentence I'm going to use in the question I construct for them. And I'm going to use the couple's exact language in that construction process. That's going to ensure two things. Number one, that I convey to the couple, in using their exact language, I'm sending the message that I understood their answer, and also I'm respecting that language, and I'm ensuring that they understand my question because I've entered into their world and I'm using their language and their way of communicating to make things happen, to make that happen. So before we watch the video, there's just a couple of more key points that I wanted to go over. And solution-focused therapy is very, very different than, I'll say cognitive behavioral therapy, just because that's what I was previously trained in doing. That in cognitive behavioral therapy, it was our job as clinicians to develop problem-solving techniques, interventions, strategies, whatever you want to call it, that would play a role in the client's life changing. And in this process, the conversation is the intervention. The solution building process is about building a conversation, not developing interventions. Now, I do not consider myself by any means a relationship expert. I do not consider myself skilled enough even to develop interventions that can heal people's relationship problems. But what I've noticed is when you have conversation with people in this way, they begin to heal their own problems right in front of you in the therapy process. And it's based upon the conversation. Steve DeShazer would say that words are reality. So if we spend time talking about and using words to describe our preferred future or the beautiful past that each relationship has experienced, then you're much more likely to experience that in your real life. And I'm telling you, the thing that amazes me most in this process is what clients do between sessions 1 and 2. I am so beyond excited. Getting couples on videotape is an extremely difficult thing to do, and in my work, in the way that I do trainings, it's an incredibly important thing. And I cannot believe I got a second session on tape, and I can't wait for people to see what happened with this particular couple between sessions 1 and 2. Now, there are previous or other solution-focused people will describe the way you can develop solution-focused interventions, and that's absolutely okay and congruent to the approach. But the solution-building approach is very, very different and requires that we trust the conversation will be the intervention. And that leads me to this thought, this idea that can solution-focused ideas and techniques be combined with other approaches? One of the things I hear so much is people will say to me, I'm a cognitive behavioral and solution-focused therapist. And I always find that so odd because those two approaches, they have such different thoughts on the way the therapist does their work. And it makes me think, how can these two approaches be combined? Like I'm not at all saying that the therapist is not doing what they say they do or whatever, but how can these two approaches be combined? And I guess my thoughts land here. If you're doing solution building, really solution building with your client, then I'm not sure how you can do something like CBT, which is a problem focused, excuse me, problem focused approach to therapy, or a problem solving approach to therapy, because you can't be doing both at the same time. Like you can't be swimming and riding a bike at the same time. One activity negates your ability to do the other. But if you're using solution focused language to develop interventions, then I suppose you could um, combined techniques, because your ultimate aim is to get to an intervention that the client would experience as helpful. But when you're doing solution building therapy, all what you're doing is you're building a conversation based on the client's words. So you're not really building towards an intervention, you're building a conversation that will be detailed enough to impact the client's life. So if you're really sticking to the solution building process, I do not believe you can, in a congruent way, combine approaches. But if you're using solution focused therapy to build an intervention, I suppose you could, because you could use the techniques of multiple approaches to do so. Now, this is a very controversial thought, controversial question, I should say. Um, I read a research study recently that said 70% of practicing psychotherapists would identify themselves as eclectic and able to combine multiple theories. I happen to be not one of those people. I do solution building work in the way that I approach solution focused therapy every day with every client. Because, like I said, I don't think I can solution build and problem solve at the same time. And I've been doing this for so long, I don't even think I'm a good problem solver. And I haven't done anything other than this in so many years. I would probably stink at it if I went off and did it tomorrow. Um, but I would encourage people to be very thoughtful in the way they describe their work, and very diligent in the way they apply their work. And hopefully that will address some of people's thoughts about how to combine solution focused therapy with other approaches. So I want to get to showing the videotape of Dave and Celeste, and hold on, I'm gonna pause it. So we had a sound issue last time, and I really do believe I figured out what I was doing wrong to encourage the sound issue to happen, and I think we were gonna let it be good to go. So I'm gonna let it play for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna pause it and kind of give a description of what we've been talking about this whole time, and see what people think, okay? Okay. Hi guys, how are you? Good. My name's Elliott, you are? Dave. Dave, nice to meet you, and
Celeste.
nice to meet you, Celeste. My name's Elliott Connie, please call me Elliott. And do I have your permission to call you Dave? And I can call you Celeste. So what are your best hopes from meeting with me?
Not getting divorced and her putting her wedding ring back on.
Okay. So, how would you know that we were having a conversation that was leading to you guys not getting divorced? Like, what would you notice differently happening?
To tell me that we weren't going to get divorced.
What would be happening instead?
Being happy.
Okay. When you're happy, what do you do?
I'm not pissed.
What do you, instead of pissed, you would call that?
Angry.
And instead of angry, what would you rather have?
I'd rather I'd like to look forward to coming home. You know,
Okay.
I would like to look forward to being around her.
And if we had a conversation that led to you feeling like you were looking forward to coming home as opposed to heading towards divorce, you'd be pleased.
Yes.
And Celeste, what about you? What are your best hopes? Notice, as I was establishing a destination for the conversation with Dave, I asked him what his best hopes were from the therapy, and uh, Dave and I had a little exchange before we arrived at a place where Dave could describe what he would need to experience to know that this conversation was useful for him. In which he said, "I'd like to look forward to coming home." But you hear his first answer. It was a negative answer, and it was an answer about her putting her wedding ring back on. And that's not really usable, right? I have to have an answer that is present focused, meaning it's about the presence of something as opposed to the absence of something, and something that I could ask questions about that wouldn't irritate Celeste. Now, if I had accepted his answer of her putting her wedding ring back on, it would be realistic to expect that she would say, well, I don't want to put my wedding ring back on, and thus she would not be okay with the conversation going in that direction. But she was okay with him looking forward to coming home, and she did not reject that as an answer. So then I turned to Celeste and I asked her what her best hopes are, because remember, each person has to have the opportunity to answer the same question. Now, sometimes the response might be longer than others. For example, Dave might be wordier this than Celeste, or Celeste might be wordier than Dave. But they each had the opportunity to answer and subsequently did put in their input. So let's hear how Celeste responded to her question.
I'm not feeling very hopeful, honestly. But I guess best hopes, like waving a magic wand, we could be friends again.
And if we had a conversation that led you guys being friends again, you would be pleased? Awesome. Okay. Well, before we chat about that, it's kind of helpful for me if I can get...
That's what her best hopes were. And again, Celeste gives me, she gives kind of a negative answer that's difficult for me to use as a clinician, as a psychotherapist. She says, I'm not feeling very hopeful. Now, I'm off camera. You know how I am with technical difficulties. This day, the camera that was aimed at me just stopped working in the middle of the recording, and none of us recognized it. But I just kind of looked at her, and she said, but as if you were waving a magic wand, I'd like to be friends again. So if we had a conversation that led to you being friends again, you'd be pleased? Celeste says yes. So I now know, remember it's based on curiosity and not nosy, I now know what I'm able to be curious about. I now have their permission to be curious about the presence of those best hopes. If I venture outside of that, I'm now becoming nosy and giving them the opportunity to reject the therapy. But they've given me a provisional contract. Harry Corman calls this sharing a common project. And that is anything that falls within the therapist remit that the clients and therapist working together would achieve the likely outcome of success. So they've given me something that I would say falls within my remit. Dave saying he'd like to look forward to coming home, and Celeste saying she'd like to be friends again. And I now have permission to pursue questions about that reality. And again, if I venture outside of that accidentally, I've now given them the opportunity to reject the therapy. So I also talked about connecting with the couple, learning about the culture of the couple, learning about the world that this particular couple lives in, and how that helps me in understanding their strengths, resources, achievements, inherent abilities, talents, what makes this couple successful, what makes them get together. So I want to show the way that I start asking the questions in the process of getting to know them. Now, I'm going to warn you, it's going to look like I'm just kind of having a chat, just, talking it up with them. But I'm actually working really, really hard because I'm filing away a lot of information that's going to later become very, very important in my ability to ask them questions. So here I'm going to play the next segment of tape. I'll let it go for 3-4 minutes or so, and just me getting to know this particular couple.
So where are the two of you from? We both grew up here in Dallas. So local guys. And how long have you been together? 10 years. I hate the way I looked at her like we're like 10 years right. Yeah, well, I'd probably have have my wedding date engraved on my ring, so I would never forget, so that's not unusual. Good thing hers is engraved on her wedding ring. She can look at it right now.
In developing what utterance I'm going to say. So I have to use their information to build my next step, to build my next question, or to take my turn. And I violated that. I did not use something they said. Dave said that he hated that he had to look at her to remember how long they've been together. I decided, for whatever reason, that I was going to add some lightness to the conversation, make a joke, and I said, I'd probably have to do the same thing. I have the my wedding date engraved in my ring. And Dave reminded me that I've now gotten outside of the realm of what they've agreed to have a conversation about. And he said she couldn't look if she wanted to because she's not wearing her wedding ring. And realizing that I just made an error, I was able to kind of remind him that I'm back on track with him by saying, well, she couldn't look at it right now. And luckily, Dave was able to accept that response, and we get back on track to the solution building process.
What do you got to do for fun?
Well, I'm a stand-up comic, so that is my fun.
By profession?
Yeah, it's getting there.
Excellent. Excellent. And ma'am, what do you do for fun?
I paint.
What do you paint?
Landscapes. It's acrylic on canvas or acrylic on board.
And do you do that by career?
No,
So what do you do for a career?
I take care of our daughter now.
Your daughter's name is?
Zoe.
And how old is Zoe? She's 5 years old. Wonderful. What is your favorite quality about Celeste? What do you enjoy most about her? I assume since you're here, there are things you'd like to see change, but tell me something about Celeste that
She's very kind. She's very kind.
how does she demonstrate her kindness?
I mean, if it's kind of annoying in a way, but strangers. I mean, there was a bad storm once, and she literally sent out a blast email to all my comic friends. It was like, hey, if you guys need a place to stay, you can come over. Didn't ask me,
Right.
we got like a 2-bedroom apartment, and,
Right.
but I mean, I understand it was just very stuff like that, homeless people. There've been several dogs and cats in the house that weren't ours that we semi-adopted. So I mean, I know it's a good quality, but at the same time, I'd appreciate a heads up.
Right, but it is a good quality.
It is a good quality. Yeah, she's very kind. So.
And what is Dave's best quality?
His optimism or enthusiasm.
And how does he demonstrate his optimism and enthusiasm?
On stage, honestly. I get to see that on stage, maybe not so much at home.
Right, but on stage you enjoy to see it.
I used to, yeah.
But you enjoy it's in there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. You guys have any questions for me? Is there anything you'd like to know about me?
What is your therapy that you teach?
The type of therapy that I teach and practice
Yes.
is called solution focused. Any questions about how that works?
Have you used it on yourself?
Have I used it on myself? Wow, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. I guess I probably have to say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to say.
Did it work?
I practice it. I hope so.
Is it like a new paradigm that you have to, the solution therapy, do you apply that to just relationships or do you apply that to other aspects of your life?
No, I mean I apply it to other aspects of my life. It's a way of working with people that kind of gets you focused on what you'd like, as opposed to what you wouldn't like. Most therapies and other aspects of our lives are focused on figuring out something's wrong and removing it. This is about identifying what we'd like to be right and creating it. It's kind of different. You guys okay to go through it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Good. I'm glad you would say that. It's a good question. No one's ever asked me that.
Spent a few minutes talking with Dave and Celeste about their relationship and really kind of getting some information about the strength and resources that they exhibit in their world, that they exhibit in their relationship, that they exhibit towards one another. And you could see I was working really, really hard. I was learning things about them that would later become the content for questions that people typically wouldn't tell about themselves. So I now know a lot about Dave and Celeste's strengths and resources and the way that they feel about each other. Something else has happened also, and I don't know if you guys picked up on it. So we've now been talking for a little under 6 minutes, and Celeste has made a significant shift when I asked her what her best hopes were from the conversation, Celeste's response was, I don't have much hope right now. But when I asked Dave if he had any, or if I asked, when I asked the couple if they had any question for me, and Dave said yes, and he asked me what the therapy was that I teach, um, and as I explained it to her, Celeste shifted from not having any hope to stating the last comment she made before I paused the tape was, I'll try anything right now. And so, just through this process of connecting, something has happened to the couple's motivation. Something has happened to, in particular, Celeste's motivation to participate in this therapy. Um, and I said earlier that there's a visceral change in their response. Now, this is a couple really at a difficult spot in their relationship, and I'm about to ask them. There's a process I describe in my book, Solution Building in Couples Therapy, called Honeymoon Talk. And I'm about to invite them into this process of honeymoon talk by asking a very powerful question that taps into the fact that each couple must have a positive beginning. And I'm about to ask the very basic question, how did you meet? And I want you to see, I'm just going to play the tape a couple more minutes so you can see what happens when the couple starts to describe the events that led to them going from not knowing each other to knowing each other to being desirous of spending more time together to eventually deciding to spend the rest of their lives together.
Any other questions? So, how did you meet?
So I was doing a show. She was, she was not, she was kind of in the middle, but just because when you're on stage, sometimes you can't see the whole crowd. So she was right there at that line of lights, and she was the only person not laughing. And so it bothered me. Like everyone else is laughing, and she's not. And so afterwards, I went up to her and I was like, why were you not laughing? And why weren't you laughing?
Well, you my laughter.
That was what hooked me in.
So that's what hooked you in.
Yeah. Well, it was like this giant. It was this giant like. I was like, check.
But they go on to describe the night they got together and then how they decided to turn it into a relationship. And it was absolutely amazing and really helped us as we shifted into having a conversation about their preferred future. I think going through this honeymoon talk phase is so helpful when you're working with couples because it takes them back to a time where they used to like each other, love each other, be very close, and have much more positive sentiments towards each other, and allows the conversation about the preferred future to be much richer with details and content. Um, by the way, we're going to be talking about the preferred future and asking questions that elicit details in October's webinar. So I guess that's it. That was the webinar that we did on Monday of this week on September 2nd. And once again, I apologize for the technical issues that occurred that caused me to have to re-record it. The only thing that you really missed was the discussion we had after I showed the videotape. Hopefully I didn't chase off all the people that were on this webinar with the crazy technical difficulties that we had. Please join us for October's event, which I believe is on October, let me see, 7th, I think, is, hold on, let me grab a calendar. Yeah, October 7th is the next webinar. I will be just back from my trip to Switzerland, Sweden, and Denmark. So hopefully I'll have some great stories, and maybe even I'll get to see a client in front of the group that I'll be training, and that would mean I'll have another videotape to show. Probably won't be able to show it on a video like this, but I'll show it at one of the trainings. So, and again, if you want to see the videotape of follow-up sessions and beyond, come to the event that we're having on October 18th, because the tape that I'm going to show is very profound. So, how you can find me online, you can find me at my website, elliottconnie.com or elliottSpeaks.com, and you can join my mailing list to hear some of my thoughts and blogs about solution focused therapy at elliottSpeaks.com or theconnieinstitute.com if you want to stay abreast of the events and products that we have at the Training Institute. You can follow me on Twitter um, at Elliott Speaks, or if you can put in on Facebook, you can like my page, and the page has been renamed. It says Elliott Speaks there, but it's actually Elliott Connie, speaker, author, psychotherapist is the page, and I would love it if you would take some time to go there and like my page. And here is my physical address. This is also the address of the Connie Institute, 1660 Keller Parkway, Suite 102, Keller, Texas 76248. Please email me comments, feedback, suggestions for upcoming webinars. I'd love to hear that stuff. Suggestions for upcoming trainings through the Institute. Love to hear that stuff as well. And feel free to give me a call. That number, 817-602-1714. I would love to hear from you guys all. So thank you so much for sticking with us and going through this process. I feel so much better about this recording because I could breathe. I wasn't blowing my nose every 5 seconds and my energy level's up. So thank you guys so much, and I look forward to everybody joining in on October's webinar. So have a great month of September. Take care of yourselves, and happy solution hunting.